to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. I thank you so much for joining us on the program today as we are here to work with you to help bring new paradigms for a new world and choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. I hope that you will stay with us every Sunday, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m. Streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We also have podcasts at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as richarddugan.com. We are also on Zoom with videos of this program. Let me rephrase that. Yes, we're on Zoom because that's how we're doing these interviews, but we're on YouTube where these videos can be seen. So I hope that you will join us there as well. Watch our interviews, get to know our guests face to face, as it were, myself as well. And I hope that you will continue to be with us. And if you're looking for it, go to Richard Dugan and tell me your story. Just look for the guy with the black hat. There you go. Those are the basic elements there. We'll also be giving you our website for our guest here in just a moment. And we will also want you to participate in 2020, the 2020s, the decade of perfect vision, where we ask you to go within, spend some time seeking out that still, quiet, small place where you can find calm, peace, relaxation, if you will, rejuvenate, re-energize, refocus. And we hope that you will take the time to do just that. We also hope that if this resonates with you, will join us financially supporting the program. We have PayPal and Patreon accounts for your security as well as ours. So do what you can. We will take energetic support as well. Our program today is going to be talking with a man who, well, you could put it in this context of rags to riches, although we're not talking necessarily about the dollar sign riches per se. Basically, it's a journey of adoption, cancer, addiction, and breakthrough to living. Our guest today is the author of Killer Graces. Interesting way to phrase that. Steve Melen is my guest. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Hello, Richard. Thank you for having me today.
Interesting title to the book. I've never considered Graces to be killer.
It's just the way things came out. I mean, this is actually named after a racehorse. So that's where it came from. My first racehorse that I participated in was named Killer Graces, and I bought into this on a whim. It was not really planned, and all I knew was the name of the horse. And so if I go through this journey for the next 10 years, it was, there was some really, I'm very graced and blessed right now. And I've had some killer things that should have knocked me out, multiple things. So I just thought it was very appropriate. Killer Graces, I was very lucky on that first horse, and I'm still lucky being here.
Well, we are, I would say, lucky to have you to share your story with us as well, and some of the things that you have learned over the years. I'm going to give it out early because I want people to begin the process of knowing where to find you. What's great is when you are able to find a website that is easy to remember, and especially if it's your name, so much the better. I was lucky. I grabbed mine early on. You did as well, apparently. Steve Melen, Melen is the last name. Melen, SteveMelen.com is the website. This is your first book, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I actually never planned on writing a book, and there was so much feedback throughout each story, and as the progression happened, that I couldn't ignore it at one point. And then finally, I started the process, but the process did take me 7 years, so it wasn't an easy process.
Wasn't a quickie there, that's for sure. Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that it's not a quick process because I'm still working on one 20 years later.
Oh, good.
Well, I didn't officially start writing it maybe until 10 or 15 years ago, but I knew that there was going to be a book there, and well, come on, be honest. I've been procrastinating, okay?
Yeah, right.
That's all there is to it. Let me address the subject because this has kind of come up a little bit. And I know that we're all looking to find out who we are, where we come from. get a little idea of what makes us tick as individuals, but specifically you as Steve Melen, me as Richard Dugan. And in your case, you dealt with the subject of adoption. And I'm curious as to, first of all, how you found out, if it was intentional or by accident.
Well, the adoption process was not the normal one. I mean, I was basically handed over one day as a trial run to another family when I was really young, about 2 years old, and I just never went back. So it wasn't through the normal ways that someone would be adopted. So I didn't know any of this, as you know, any of this is because it was happening when I was 2 years old. So that was back when I was born in Minnesota. I came out here in California when I was 9 months old, and then my mother at the time needed help and support, and she let me go with one of the teachers at her sister's school for a trial run. So that trial run, just ended up turning into my life, and I didn't find out much about that. I knew my parents who adopted me told me I was adopted all along. But they said I could meet my parents if I wanted to, my biological parents, and I was too worried or nervous or scared to do it for the first 18 years. And then not until right after I turned 18, my biological mother, approached me in the parking lot of my high school and introduced herself. And that was the first time I reconnected with my biological family. But subsequently, I've met my dad, my mom, and I've had a sit down with them. It's a wild story in the book, but I've had a sit down with both of them about 6 years ago in Minnesota, and that didn't go so smoothly. But I'm glad I did it.
So, would you say that your relationship with your biological parents is strained?
No, it's actually good now.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think it was strained between the two of them, not between me and them.
I see. I beg your pardon.
Yes. Yeah. So they do not talk or like each other because my mom told my father that I died in a car accident when I was 3. So he didn't know I was alive for 25 plus years. So that would cause some strain when he discovers later on that I'm actually alive. But I made the effort after the cancer and whatnot to meet and reach out and get them both together, and they don't get along. I get along with each one of individually.
Well, that's good. And have you been able to kind of answer that kind of question about where you come from now? Has that helped you better understand who Steve Melen is?
Well, you wonder about nature versus nurture, because I was raised by this family that was completely different than my biological family. And I was always wondering, I didn't look like my family that raised me. And then subsequently, they both died in their 50s. So the parents who adopted me have passed on. And so then I've been able to reconnect with my biological family and get to know them better. And I learned about where I get some of my behaviors, some of these things that are just in me that of course you can point at the bad ones, like, that's where I got that, and that's where I got that. But they're good things too. I have good and bad, as we all do. And I see where a lot of this nature part came from versus the nurture.
Yeah. Have you had the desire, the interest, the curiosity to even do one of these DNA tests that's now readily available?
I've done it. Yeah, I did it, and I was questioning, what was, if it was true and how much was true and who to believe, because the stories are different about different things. And yes, so I've done it. I do know through the 23andMe that these things are factual. But each person has their own side of the story of how it went and what happened. And right. You can do your own little scientific studies and kind of figure some things out. But in the process, I found out a lot of weird stuff that isn't necessarily the best. But that's for book number 2, maybe.
Well, let's talk about the book. Now, this goes into a lot of what we've discussed as it is right up to this point. But you also went through a lot of other stuff that took you down a road, as you say, about 10 years worth. Uh, Not everybody goes down that road of one or more of those parts, if you will. I myself, when it came to addictions, um, especially when it came to substance abuse, I just never, it, it wasn't that, well, they say it's illegal and you could go to
Mhm.
jail. No, I wasn't afraid of that. It
Mhm.
just, and I wasn't worried about the harm that it might do. It just didn't interest me. I'm
Mhm.
curious as to how it started for you.
Yeah, the addiction part, it was developing. I mean, I was told when I was adopted that my parents had addiction issues. So that was always told to me, and I should watch out for it. I think where it really was first seeded was in younger childhood, is my desire to be have friends and to be liked, because I felt maybe abandoned without knowing it, abandoned as a little child, as a 2-year old, a 1-year old, by a dad, by a mom. And so I wanted to be liked by friends. So I think what I did was I found a way I wanted to be funny and I wanted people to laugh. So when I was a young child, before using any substances, I think I used humor and that in sports to actually get friends. And then the older I got, I started to find alcohol, and I felt that it maybe numbed some of the problems, and then I felt that it enhanced the good parts of me, which it over time it does not do that. But where the addiction really, really got bad was after. I mean, I guess we're going to talk about my cancer. The cancer that I had with my stomach being removed, I got addicted to pain meds because I was in such bad shape, and that really accelerated all the problems. And that started about 13 years ago, almost to the day. But I've been sober for 7 years now. But it was cruising along, waiting to actually take off, and it took off after the cancer, and that's when things just really fell apart.
Mm. Well, I have dealt with that subject, not personally as far as having the diagnosis. My wife, uh, 20 years ago, as we converse here, it was 20 years ago. She was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and it was so rare that the way they described it, I asked how many people have had it. Oh, 1,200,
Oh
1,200
wow.
women. I'm going, wait a minute. Okay, that's rare. Sure, I get it. And then, of course, I said, okay, well, what's the remission rate and this and that and the other thing, those kinds of things. And well, if you have the chemo, you have a 70% chance of survival, of getting rid of it, and then, of course, she went through chemo, she went through surgery and chemo and so forth. And her story is what has driven my particular book that's taken 20 years. But
Mhm.
I'm curious as to your first reaction, because I know from watching my wife, experiencing what my wife's first reaction was,
Mhm.
which wasn't a good react. Well, I shouldn't say it wasn't a good reaction. It was a good reaction because of the way she reacted. She did have some emotions over it, obviously. Um, I'm on the outside. I'm looking in, and that's the hardest. I have to tell you, I never planned on being a caregiver.
Yes.
And I asked my wife shortly after her surgery. It might have actually been just before her surgery. I says, "What do you want to do? Do you want to live or do you want to die?" And I actually asked that question that way. I
Mhm.
says, "I may not like your answer or your choice, I should say, but I will support you in whatever your choice is." Well, she
Mhm.
chose to live, and she's still alive to this day and doing
Wonderful.
great, been free and clear. What about you? When you first got the diagnosis, what was your initial reaction?
Oh shit was my initial reaction. Sorry for the language. All
That's all
right, but
right.
all right, but that I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know the severity of it at the time. I was told I went in. The process was about 6 to 9 months from the time when I first had symptoms to when I actually went to the emergency room. And I was already going to my primary care physician and checking things out because I had a pain, I had discomfort. The final time was 13 years ago, it might even be today. Like it's within these 4 or 5 days. And I go to the emergency room and they find out that I'm anemic. Then they do a chest scan, and then they do a endoscopy. And this is all within an hour or two. And then they come out and say, you've got cancer. And I said, well, okay, that word is just terrible. But then they say you need to have your stomach removed immediately. And and they said you might have pancreatic cancer. And I didn't know what any of these things were really, as far as the severity or the odds. And so I just basically put my head down and called my friends and said, I think I have pancreatic cancer, stomach cancer. And they all were just, I could see the looks on their face, but they were all being very supportive. So over the next 2 weeks, I had to have about multiple doctor visits and endoscopies and staging and check out where I was going to have this procedure done. And I ended up choosing Stanford. Stanford then wanted to do the surgery on January 30th. And I said, no, can't do it that day. That's my birthday. And so because I didn't want, and there was a chance I could have died on the operating table. So I didn't want my birthday and death day to be the same day. That would just make too big of a story, and I wouldn't be able to, write this book, I guess. I wasn't thinking about a book back then. But so I pushed it off a week after that. So on the surgery day, they took out my stomach, my spleen, half my pancreas, a third of my esophagus, and then followed by chemo and radiation after that. So that was the beginning of a very tough road. But as you talk about being the caregiver, that word, I work with caregivers and patients around the world and country now. And I wasn't aware at the time at how hard it was from the caregiver side. It was so hard. It ended up ruining my marriage. My marriage fell apart. But I commend you, and I commend what you went through, because it is really hard to watch a loved one go through that. And because the odds weren't with me. They weren't with me. And so what do? You talk about, what you need to do if I don't make it. And, or do you even want to live? Like, those conversations are really, really hard to have. Especially I was only 38 or just turning 38. So I was younger at the time, younger.
I'm curious, asking that question, am I going to live or die? Do I want to live or die? What were your beliefs, your philosophy regarding death and dying then, and how has it changed? How have they changed? The philosophy, the beliefs in regards to death and dying, and what's after this life.
Yeah, I grew up in a religious family, going to church every weekend from 5 years old to high school. And then I broke away from that when I went to high school. And just so happened to coincided when I started drinking, which is kind of strange. I look back I just kind of diverted and was more into fun, travel, girls, parties, sports, those things. And I kind of pushed that aside then. And then not until after all of this did I come back to being very, very spiritual in this whole process, because I think I pushed the edge of almost dying a couple times with the addiction and the cancer. I mean, they code blued me in the hospital, and I was sedated and on a breathing tube for a week. So I woke up, hallucinating and seeing things, and I was strapped to the bed. I couldn't move, I was like, what's going on? And I thought, so since then, I've been on this journey trying to find out, or trying to just understand more about how these things are. I think I have people or spirits or powers looking over me. I don't know how I made it through this. It's per my doctors, per my friends, per everyone, they say it's miraculous. And now I want to, there's more to all of this. Mm-hmm. The power of the prayer from all my friends and family, I absorbed all of that energy. And I think that really helped me get to where I am today. I can't explain it. And I mean, who really can explain it? But I do have a very spiritual belief that there's more to all of this, and I'm still on that journey now.
One of the thoughts that came to me when you described your initial diagnosis and you got to have your stomach removed right away. Um, has there not been enough advancement yet, or has there been, as far as you're aware, to do, I don't know, they do transplants of just about every other part of the body. What about a stomach transplant?
I don't know anyone who's ever had a stomach transplant. They've done what they, I know lots of people, and some people actually, my doctor prophylactically removed stomachs from a whole family because they had the gene for it. So people would, I don't know, people will do that, but you don't need to have a stomach. And I didn't know you could live without a stomach at the time that it was happening. And they told me, and then they took my spleen out, and I didn't even know what the spleen did at the time, right? They took half the pancreas out. I said, I think I need my pancreas, so yeah, they do not do replacements of stomachs. The only thing that I do now differently without my stomach is I have to give myself a B12 shot once a month. And that's the only thing that is absorbed in my stomach that is not absorbed in my small intestine. Everything else I do is same. Now I am anemic. I do have, I'm skinny. I can't gain weight. I don't absorb calories. I'm 45 pounds lighter than I was before. So some of these, the joke is that, people go, oh, I'd love to have that problem, not being able to gain weight. Well, yeah, it was a little hard path to take, but yeah, you can do everything normal without a stomach, and people choose to do it prior to even being diagnosed with cancer these days. And that's pretty crazy to me.
From your perspective, I can understand that too. I kind of like mine.
Yes.
I had never
Yes.
heard that you could actually live without it. And if I may ask some more detailed questions,
Yeah.
do you eat relatively normally, or is that something because without the stomach, you don't have the acids to break down the food
Right.
to be then distributing the minerals, the vitamins, minerals, and calories, and all those other parts to the through the bloodstream and the rest of the body.
Yeah, at first my meals were, I still struggle 13 years later with the meals I eat, but I do eat. I can eat steak and lobster if, I may feel tired and uncomfortable and have to lie down after, but I eat pizza and Mexican food and Chinese food, and I eat whatever. I eat more than my wife does. I just don't absorb all of that, all of those calories that are coming in. And I no longer, I get more reflux that comes up now that because they cut the bottom of my esophagus out, and we have a sphincter up here that stops things from coming up. And so I get a bit more reflux, but I have to do, I have to chew more. I chew more to get the food down, and it absorbs a bit better. You and most everyone else has the acids to break it down. It's the holding place. Then it gets pushed to the small intestine.
Okay.
But yeah.
So you have developed some new techniques, if you will, protocols as far as eating is concerned. But again, you're just like the rest of us. You and I could go out for a cup of coffee and some bacon and eggs and have a great time, and it would be wonderful.
Coffee here. I probably have too much coffee now. I love bacon and eggs. I love all of that. It's unstoppable. Right.
So when you are not talking with folks such as myself about killer graces, what are you doing with your life these days? I mean, obviously that turned your life upside down initially.
Yes. I am a financial advisor by nature, and I work remotely because that's what a lot of people do these days versus going to the office. I have my own clients, so that keeps me busy. I have 2 kids, a daughter and a stepson that are both teenagers. And then I actually am very, very active in mentoring people with stomach cancer and addiction. So I'm on a board of Debbie's Dream Foundation, which is a cancer foundation that we go to Washington, D.C. every year, and I speak with Senate and Congress members. I clearly am not doing that like this February, but we've been doing that, helping to get funding for stomach cancer every year. So I go meet I was literally in Pelosi's office last year, like crazy stuff that's been transpired lately. So yeah. I go do all of these type of things, and then on top of that, I'm very active in having fun and enjoying travel. I've been on 20 airplanes in the last 6 months. I've been to Panama and Mexico and Atlanta, and I have horses that I own still that are running around the country. So I am making the most of every opportunity I can because I just I don't want to miss out and I want to live.
What about your immune system? Was it impacted severely, or is it pretty much intact from that standpoint? Because obviously you have to take that one shot every month and so forth. But I'm just curious, in
I,
terms of, especially in terms of this virus. I mean, I'm not going to de-emphasize the severe seriousness and severity of this virus. And now we have not just one, but apparently two different strains as our conversation is unfolding here.
Mhm.
But I personally believe that if, and again, this is not a guarantee, and I'm just speaking for myself, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not putting this out for everybody else. If my immune system is strong, I think I stand a better chance of fighting it off. Whereas, as you hear many people who end up succumbing to the virus, they say they died of underlying circumstances, and most of those were diabetes, heart disease, and a bunch of other stuff that could have been reversed had they taken better care of themselves. So, what about this virus? Are you concerned about it in that regard because your immune system is weak, or is it a pretty strong one?
That is a great question about how strong my immune system really is. Ever since I went through the chemo and the radiation, and I was beaten down so low for so
Mhm.
long, I haven't really gotten a cold or gotten flus. I mean, I do get my flu shot every year. I do, and this in COVID, I have been mask wearing, sanitize wearing, but I do go out every day to the store or go run around. I do things, and I've been on planes, so I don't really know for a fact whether or not I think my immune system maybe is okay, but technically with all these things removed, it should be very compromised. So I hope to be able to get the vaccine as soon as I can.
Mhm.
But I for even as compromised as I am, I'm kind of far down the line on being able to get it. It doesn't seem like it's something I'm able to get in line for at this point, and they're
Yeah.
doing the other frontline workers, but I don't tend to get sick these days. Now, I will say my iron levels are extremely low. I actually have to go in tomorrow and get an iron infusion, my first one in 13 years. I guess you're supposed to be between 40 and 200, and I'm a four. I'm a
Oh,
four, but whatever that. So my doctor said that my iron, so that means my energy should be lower, and I have zero in my tanks. But they said, so I finally went in, and the doctor just said I needed an infusion. Well, I'm not going to die from low iron. I just supposedly don't have any energy. But for someone who has no energy, I do a lot of stuff. So I'm going to try that tomorrow, and we'll see. And I've got two things scheduled in next week and this week, and hopefully that will help that level. But that's just my energy. It's not my immune system. I
yeah.
don't specifically know. Everything else seems to be okay.
Let's talk a little bit about your overall philosophy as it pertains not just to the cancer, but to everything that you have been through, and how that's changed over the years. I was born and raised a Catholic, Western Rite of the Catholic Church. And as
Mhm.
I grew up, I was exposed to Mormonism because our neighbors were Mormons. I
Mhm.
was uh, introduced, in a manner of speaking, to Judaism, just especially around the holidays with Hanukkah. And of course, I remember hearing, "Oh yes, this is the month this where we celebrate Yom Kippur and all these different things." And and then of course Islam. And I was a Baha'i for a year and a half back in the early '90s. I consider myself today to be a metaphysician
Mhm.
because I'm looking at all of those. And one of the beautiful tenets of the Baha'i faith, the founder Baha'u'llah would say, and is written, if you accept one of the messengers of God, you accept them all, and if you reject one of them, you reject them all. Well, I don't have a particular favorite.
Mhm.
When I was working for a Christian station, Steve, I was actually talking with some people, and I says, yeah, I'm on my search. And they say, well, once you find Jesus, your search is over. I said, well, no, not actually. That's not entirely true. Actually, when I find Jesus, my search has just begun.
Mhm.
And I firmly believe that. So I'm curious about your search, where it started, how it's been transformed through your life, and where it is today.
Yeah, so my search is ongoing right now. I'm really, really looking even more now. I grew up Protestant, Presbyterian, and ended up going to a Catholic college, and then and in that Catholic college, I took religious studies of all different types. We were required to take Catholic theology, and then I took a history of religions in college. And at that point in college, I was very my direction wasn't focused toward religious studies, but I did learn a lot about Taoism and Buddhism and Judaism and all these different religions at the time too. So it actually strengthened of my faith in something, and I just didn't know exactly what that was going to be. And then my girlfriend was Jewish at the time, and I would go over and hang out with them, and they would call me this is what they would call me. They'd call me the English muffin with all the bagels. Like I would be like the one outsider that was with all of them. I wasn't one of them, and it was just an interesting. I was trying to find what was going to be me and who was me, and I felt that there was so much more to all of this, and I've become much more spiritual in this day without a specific point. I mean, I believe, but I can be cynical, and each religion, I can point out the things that I'm going, how does that? But what I do believe is that people that have a faith are generally kinder people, generally, and they want to be kind to other people, and they want to get through this. And I want to help others, and I want to be part of a positive energy, and whatever that energy is. I mean, and then when you get sober and you go to AA meetings, they tell you that there's a lot of God talk in there. Mm-hmm. And not everyone associates with God, right? Not everyone, especially when you get these people who come from all these wild backgrounds. And so it's the higher power that you have to look at to help you get out of these problems. And the focus has to go away from you. Stop being so focused on yourself and focus toward others and what else is out there. And that is the God or the higher power. And they say whatever you want to call the God of your choice or the higher power. So I have not been able to label in my current status or state what is my higher power exactly. It's not a person or a thing. It is a power that's out there that is greater than myself, and I know it's there. And where I'm going after, I think I have people who are looking out over me, that their energies are somewhere here in, looking out for me and helping me continue to walk this positive energy path. So I'm all about energy. I can see energy and feel energy, and I can't quite explain it, but to me, it's fascinating.
In conversations with my wife, she shared some things with me where, yeah, her life could have taken a totally different turn. But she says, yeah, I must have angels on my shoulder somewhere because that shouldn't have gone that way,
Yeah.
And this is in relation to other people who came into her sphere of her life, and including this, what was referred to by our Vedic astrologer friend who has been on this program many times. And he told her, like, I'm going to say 23, 24 years ago, which puts it 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years before this. He said that you will have, in this particular period of time, in this particular year of 2001, you will have, pardon me, what he referred to as a death-like experience. Well, getting the diagnosis of cancer is pretty damn close to that, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why, we've both felt very strongly that, yeah, I understand when she starts feeling a certain way in certain parts of her body, and she starts to get scared. And then she'll go have the scans or the tests or what have you and finds out it wasn't no, you're fine. Everything's good. And so forth. But that's something that I know is going to be with you, for example, obviously the rest of your life. Do you recall what the symptoms were that drove you to the physician who then told you after all the tests, you got cancer? And
What?
and today, do you experience any like symptoms that then make you want to rush to the medic to make sure, oh, here we go again. Please, no.
Yeah, I had I the doctors initially thought thought it was stress because I was 37 years old. I had a 1-year-old baby in the house. I had a new job after 12, 15 years. I had all sorts of things going on. So they thought it was just stress building up, and that was what the pain was and the discomfort. But my energy was dropping, and my weight started to drop too. So those are things that you got to pay attention to. If you have sudden weight loss, or you have pains that don't quite go away that are internally, that's and or your energy. I thought I was just exhausted. I thought it was just stress. I thought I was losing weight because I had gained baby weight with my wife. She gained weight, and then I gained weight, and then I started losing after the baby. I thought it was sympathy weight that I was gaining and then losing. Well, it just so happens that I was bleeding from a mass there. So when I got to the final emergency room, I only went there because I couldn't see my primary care physician. It was too early in the morning and I hadn't slept the entire night, and it was just really uncomfortable. So making that diversion to go to someone else, and it wasn't an ulcer, it wasn't, I was taking anti-acid medications, and that none of that was working. So finally, I was able to, get that diagnosis, and then now I still have challenges. I don't have really problems anymore, because if I looked at all these things as problems, I would overwhelm myself and I would be so stressed out about everything that I'm facing. I currently, this summer, well, let's just rewind. Last year, I had a pain in the same area and I didn't know what it was. And I was on my anniversary. I got remarried and I was on my 1-year anniversary, and pain got so intense. When we got home, I went to the emergency room. Well, I was in the hospital for 8 days. I had my gallbladder had to get removed. It was gangrene. So the gallbladder came out last year too. So that sucked. And then if we go to this year, this was in the summer, I was having swallowing problems, and I thought maybe the cancer came back in my throat. Well, they scanned me and did endoscopies, and now I've had to have 3 stretching of my esophagus in the past 4 months because the radiation treatment that I had 12 years ago scarred and damaged my esophagus, and so it's been closing. I got an Advil stuck in my throat this summer, and I couldn't swallow it, so I had to go to the emergency room. So I tend not to go into the emergency room, but it's clear by the time I get there, I'm pretty bad off. So,
Wow.
So yes, I try not to jump to these, but I've gotten through them. I have to have one more stretching of my esophagus next week.
Wow.
It's terrible.
Seems to me like it's about time to go to the used body lot and trade it in for a better model.
I'm getting more aerodynamic. I'm getting rid of some of these parts. That's what I am.
Well,
more efficient.
Obvious. Well, and I love your sense of humor in regards to it, your attitude about it, because we all have stuff we have to deal with. I mean, and yet I've come to this conclusion. We all have we have the same emotions. Okay. We all experience the same emotions. It's our stories that define us as individuals. And it's those same emotions, in my opinion, that unite us as community. And that's one of the reasons why we are having you on the program to not only become a part of our community here on Tell Me Your Story, but also to share with others who are maybe going through some of the same kinds of things, whether it be cancer or anything else, any other dis-ease or misalignment or a malfunction, if you will. You hear quite often, Steve, from the auto dealers, auto manufacturers. We are recalling 5.5 million vehicles going back 55 years because of a single defective part. And my first thought was, how is that even possible that your engineers didn't know that this would be a problem? And finally, somebody explained it to me, and you'd think it would be simple logic on my part. They explained it to me. Even an engineer and a designer does not know exactly how a particular part or system is going to hold up over the long haul. And that's the reason why those kinds of things happen. It's not intentional design flaws and that kind of thing, in spite of one gentleman I interviewed about 25, 30 years ago who wrote a book called Built-in Obsolescence. It's basically because it wear and tear, and they don't know how it's going to how that's going to play out over the years. And don't get me wrong, I'm a believer in the force too, my friend. But I'm sitting here thinking, sometimes I wonder if the manufacturer should have spent just take another day, take one more day, and make sure you get it right so the parts last. Well, it's not on the manufacturer; it's how we, as a species, over the generations, have treated ourselves. Because it's I don't know about you, Steve, but I believe, I don't know this, but I believe from what I have learned over the years that each one of us has the potential for certain diseases. In your case, you had the potential for stomach cancer, and boom, voila, there it is. I have the potential for type 2 diabetes. I had it at one time. I don't anymore because I knew how I got it. And it was from the pandemic. And it was because, like most everybody else, I switched to comfort foods. And what do they have in them? Lots of sugars and lots of carbs. And my blood sugar went through the roof. Hey, 2 months later, after I was diagnosed, it's down to normal. So it's not impossible, but we have these potentialities. It doesn't mean we will get them. It means that if we do certain things, live in certain environments, eat certain foods, do these different things and so forth, that we increase the potentiality to the possibility and then to the reality sometimes. And then it's like, okay, how do I back this up? How do I reverse this? Has there been a time, going back to your philosophical leanings, considering I'm sure what you have been through, where you've maybe taken a look metaphysically or spiritually or symbolically, metaphorically, I don't know how many other words I can use, to find out what the stomach was all about? Now, certainly on a physical level, we know, okay, but on a spiritual or metaphysical or metaphorical level, what's that all about for you? Have you done any research in that regard or searching?
That's a fascinating question. I think that we carry a lot of stuff and heat and energy in our stomach, and I have not really thought about or even been asked that question, but I do know that I took a lot of stuff in, and I don't think it was necessarily the healthiest when I was younger. My parents died of heart attacks in their 50s, 52 and 57. And so I don't think that I grew up in a house that was ingesting a lot. There was no alcohol ingested, but the stuff that was brought into our bodies was probably not as healthy as it could have been. And it took both of them out with heart attacks. So I think, symbolically, I had a what was it? Was it embarrassed about my parents? Was it, they were overweight, and I had this thing about their eating that bothered me.
Mm.
But I was embarrassed by it, and and I did not want to follow in those footsteps to be obese. And so now that you asked that question, I don't know how that connection is, but there is some connection about the stomach itself and how I really had a dislike for it and what it did to my parents.
Interesting insight.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back to what I asked earlier about heredity. Of course, after finding out I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, it's probably about a year or two after that, I called my mom and I just kind of said, "Hey, I know that Grandpa died from a heart attack and so on and so on and so on." And she said, "Well, high blood pressure, it runs in the family." Well, when I was first diagnosed back in, I think it was 2010, 11, 12, um, I told the doc, I says, "You can take all the fluids you want. You're not going to find it in the fluids." I took blood and urine and this and that and the other thing to see where the problem was. Cholesterol might have been a tad high, but it wasn't, dangerous. I says, "It's not in my biology. It's in my psychology." See, I moved to California in 2006, and I moved from Phoenix, which is turning into another LA. But that was my hometown and so forth. And so I, I told him, I said, "I'm having trouble dealing with," and this is what I said then, "with the stupid people doing stupid stuff on the road, you know." And I've made some changes. I tried to remind myself of what someone said to me, "Richard, they did not get up this morning saying, 'Let's get Richard.' Okay. It wasn't personal." And I took that two ways. One was, "Oh, okay. Boy, I'm glad it wasn't personal." The other way was, "What do you mean it's not personal? They don't care enough about me to make it personal." It's like kind of silly. But yeah, and that's really where it's at. I mean, I've always been, I think, what would be considered a type A person, very energetic, very high strung, I suppose you might say. I mean, even my brother and sisters would probably agree that, yeah, there were times when I would get real upset and when things didn't go my way, sure. But that's just my temperament, something I've lived with, and I've learned how to make the adjustments and reprocess what has just happened and saying, "Okay, wait a minute." Also realizing too that what I'm upset about that's on the outside is usually something within myself that I'm upset about. And so I turn it inwardly, and I start to process it that way. So it's an interesting process that we all go through. And I'm hoping that more people will do that, especially when they go to pick up a copy of your book, Killer Graces. It's written by my guest, Steve, and Steve, it's Steve Melen, Steve Melen, Melen, and SteveMelen.com is his website, not mine, mine's RichardDugan.com. Steve, I want to thank you so much for giving us so much time here on the program. Steve Melen, who again is the author of Killer Graces. I want to encourage our listeners to go to your website to find out more about you and the work you're doing. And hey, we'll look for that second book if that's something that's on the horizon for you, if that's of interest to you to pursue that. I also have three final questions that I would like to ask you, but I'm going to ask those of you in just a moment. But first, I want to remind our listeners that we are here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at richarddugan.com. And we are also on YouTube. You can listen to and watch these interviews. I hope you will go there and even subscribe. If you also resonate with what we're doing, you like what we're trying to bring your way, we encourage you to support us financially through PayPal or Patreon accounts. They are there for your security as well as ours. Participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s. and get that insight, get that intuition. That's something I didn't get a chance to ask you on this program, and maybe we'll have you back again to talk a little bit about that and some of the insights that you've more insights, and I'm sure that they'll find that also in the copy of your book. And so there you go. Those are those elements that I wanted to bring to our listeners' attention. So my first of three questions to you that I like to ask all of my guests, which you may have answered during the program, but I like to ask them pointedly. The first is, who is Steve Melen?
Steve Melen is just a kid who wants to get through life and be happy and support and raise my children and be with my wife to the very end. I'm just a little kid still.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
By releasing this book, it's given me a tool to reach out to more people, to give them a little hope and inspiration. I didn't plan on releasing it during this time of COVID and world trauma that's going on, but I think we all needed diversion at times, a little distraction, and we all need a positive, happy ending, and that's really what I want. I want to entertain / inspire people just to realize that you can get through these things that you're going through.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
My purpose, it's unfolding right now. I found that I'm being rewarded more for the work that I'm doing and helping others. And I think I've been given another chance, a third chance to live here, to be able to pass that to others. And I think that is going to help others live longer. And the more we live and recover, the more productive we are in society and the more helpful we are to other people. And that just makes a better world to live in. And that's what my purpose is, giving back now.
Steve Melen, again, thank you so much for joining us. And please, folks, go to stevemelen.com. We will be linked to your website too, Steve, so that people can go straight there while they're listening to the interview as well. And again, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
And I thank you for listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast podcast, love to lol.